This has got to be probably the most powerful conventional airstrike and bombing run in the history of mankind to some extent. And so precise, so direct, and really aimed at neutralizing Iran's nuclear program.
President Donald Trump bombs Iran, shocking the world and certainly shocking the Iranian regime. What did he do? Why did he do it? What are the implications? And how can Christians pray? And how can Christians support the people of Israel that are taking retaliatory ballistic missile attacks right as we record this? Hi, this is Joel Rosenberg, founder of the Joshua Fund with my wife, Lynn. Also, we are the co-hosts of this podcast, Inside the Epicenter. And this is a special wartime edition. This is something that our last podcast, if you listen to it, you know that on Friday, June 20th, I interviewed former Vice President Mike Pence. And I asked him, what do you think Donald Trump's going to do? Do you think he's going to attack the Iranian nuclear sites with American B-2 bombers and American bunker buster bombs, 30,000-pound bombs, unlike any other non-nuclear bombs in history? No other country has them. Or do you think President Trump is going to just stand with Israel, but require Israel to finish the job if they can against these hardened, mountainous nuclear sites in Iran? And I want to encourage you to go back and listen to that podcast because Mike Pence knows Donald Trump better than any world leader, more than any of his Trump's close personal advisors and counselors, because Mike Pence was the vice president and was at Trump's side for 4 straight years in some of the most consequential decisions that have ever been made in the Oval Office, including taking out the Iranian terror master, the commander of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, Qasem Soleimani, tearing up the Iran nuclear deal, imposing upon Iran the maximum pressure economic sanctions that drove Iranian currency, foreign reserves down to $5 billion, nearly bankrupted them, moved the Israeli embassy, or the U.S. embassy rather, to Jerusalem, recognized Jerusalem as the capital of the Jewish state, and on and on and on and on, including brokering no less than 4 Arab-Israeli peace and normalization agreements. Pence was at Trump's side, advising and counseling Trump every step of the way. So I wanted to get Mike Pence's take. And even though they obviously they had a bad breakup, Pence basically made, I'm summarizing, I'm paraphrasing, but he basically said Trump should finish the job. If Israel needs the help to actually bomb the sites at Fordo and Isfahan and Natanz and or Iraq or any of the others that are mentioned, then Trump should do it. If Bibi doesn't need it, then fine. But help Israel finish the job. That was Pence's point, and I pressed him on it several times just to make sure I was really hearing it. And that's what he was saying. And sure enough, we posted that podcast on Saturday morning, the 21st, and then published the lead story on All Israel News about that, Finish the Job by Pence. And what happened? I mean, just 6-8 hours later, President Trump ordered U.S. B-2 bombers to attack those facilities, those nuclear facilities in Iran. An extraordinary time that most people didn't think was going to happen, but it did happen. And the implications are huge. Yes, we are, in the early hours of this morning, I'm recording this right now at 2:45 Israel time here in Jerusalem. In Washington right now, it is 7:47 in the morning. So it's been about 7 or 8 hours since the attack. And we're going to be bringing to you in just a moment my interview with the former editor-in-chief of the Jerusalem Post, a military affairs reporter for the Jerusalem Post, and the author of a book about how a previous Israeli prime minister destroyed a secret Syrian nuclear reactor back in 2007, I believe it was. And so the question is, what is Yaakov Katz's take on what happened, why it's so important? We're going to go there in just a moment. But right now we are taking, over the last few hours, we've taken several waves of retaliatory strikes by the Iranian regime. And Israel is bracing for more. So far, 86 Israeli citizens civilians are wounded in these attacks, and we expect more trouble coming. Like I said, there's already been 2 rounds of attacks and about 35 missiles total so far, but we're expecting more. We'll see. We'll see what happens. Israel's now attacking more sites inside Iran. So this is a fast-moving story, and there's real damage being done in Israeli cities. Yes, the Israeli military, missile defense system has done an amazing job at shooting down about 85 to 90% of the missiles that have been fired at us. And actually a higher percentage, maybe 95 to 98% shooting down of the Iranian suicide drones that are coming at us. That's good. But these missiles are so big from Iran that when they punch through, they cause tremendous damage. A lot of people wounded, a lot of loss of life. Not as bad as loss of life as you might think, because there's enough time when the sirens go off and our apps go off and we have time to get to bomb shelters. But it's still been a brutal few hours, and we can't rest on the idea that this is over. It's not over. But President Trump has done something huge. We're going to talk about that in a moment. Before I turn to Yaakov Katz, I do want to say this. We have just set up with the Joshua Fund, we've relaunched the Rapid Response Fund. That's a fund in which we raise money specifically to go to emergency projects to help people in need that's sort of a separate track from our normal investment in food and in humanitarian relief and in strengthening the church and strengthening congregations, churches in Israel and in the Arab world. The Rapid Response Fund is a separate fund to raise a large amount of money rapidly so that we can respond to needs that are not in our budget, that we don't have money for. And that is needed right now. So I want to just take a moment. If you would go to joshuafund.com, again, you can go to www.joshuafund.com. Immediately when you get there, you'll see an opportunity for monthly giving. And I would encourage you to continue to give in a monthly way if you're not currently a donor. So we can continue funding our general budget needs. That's a very important thing. But you'll also see the opportunity to give a special one-time gift or a monthly gift to the Rapid Response Fund. And I want to encourage you to do that because the needs are growing by the hour. And Lynn was just on, and she's still working right now, and that's why she's not on this podcast. Lord willing, she'll be on this next podcast. But she's been focused on all morning working with our special projects team, our humanitarian relief team, trying to figure out how to respond to these needs. But we definitely need more money in that Rapid Response Fund because there are now more needs than we have funds for. So if you're asking, how can I help? Definitely pray. That's our number one thing. Praying for peace, praying for total victory over the Iranian regime, and praying for protection from these missile and drone attacks from Iran, and that Israel could defeat and destroy all of those missiles and drones so we don't have to shoot them out of the sky. But also, we could use your actual financial help. It's all tax deductible if you live in the States. It can be tax deductible if you give through Canada. You can find out all the details at joshuafund.com. Thank you so much. With that opening, I want to take a break. And when we come back, we're going to talk to Yaakov Katz. Like I said, a military reporter. He was the editor-in-chief of the Jerusalem Post. He's a friend. He's an Orthodox Jew. He's not a believer in Jesus. He's not a New Testament guy like I am, but he is an expert, and his perspective, I think, is really going to be very interesting. So I want to go to that in just a moment with this special wartime edition of Inside the Epicenter, Trump Attacks Tehran. I just want to bring up Psalm 91. That's the psalm that's on my heart today, and I'm seeing it texted to Lynn and me from so many people and posted on social media. Let's just take a moment and read this. Psalm 91, reading from the New American Standard Bible. He who dwells in the shelter of the Most High will abide in the shadow of the Almighty. I will say to the Lord, my refuge and my fortress, my God in whom I trust. For it is he who delivers you from the snare of the trapper and from the deadly pestilence. He will cover you with his pinions, that is the feathers of an eagle. And under his wings you may seek refuge. His faithfulness is a shield and a bulwark. It's interesting, all that language is all about we can hide in a fortress, we can hide in a place where we will be protected by the God who loves us and wants to protect us in danger. The psalmist uses the language of refuge, fortress, keep delivering us from the snare of the trapper, so our feet don't get captured, that it'll protect us from deadly diseases, deadly pestilence, that he'll cover us with his wings, that he'll give us refuge. And then verse 5, you will not be afraid of the terror by night or of the arrow that flies by day. And it goes on. And so I would encourage you, if you haven't had your devotions yet today, or even if you have, I would encourage you to sit down and read through Psalm 91 and let that be an encouragement to you. You see other verses like 1,000 may fall at your side and 10,000 by your right hand, but it shall not approach you. And the Lord will give his angels charge over us. Lynn and I and our team here in Israel are really holding on to these promises. We feel them, we see them, and we know that you're praying for us, you're encouraging us. And I just want you to know the Joshua team is on the move as we speak, figuring out how to provide emergency resource and comfort, encouragement through the local believers to a nation that doesn't know the Lord, not from the Old Testament perspective, and certainly not from the New Testament perspective. So please be praying. Yaakov Katz, the former editor-in-chief of the Jerusalem Post, joins me now here on Inside the Epicenter. Yaakov, wow, what a night. I mean, I know you and I and all Israelis look at each other so often over the last 21, almost 22 months, and we say that because there have been big inflection points. But personally, I can't think of a bigger moment in U.S.-Israeli history since the moving of the embassy. But in terms of sheer consequence, in terms of reshaping this region, maybe forever, certainly for the near term, this was a big night. Would you just help us walk through what actually happened and kind of what's your initial take? And then we're going to unpack a little bit your geopolitical take and also your sense of what does this mean? How should we look at Netanyahu differently in light of this? But just from your perspective, what happened and why is it so significant?
Well, Joel, first of all, great to be with you. I'm a big fan.
Well, likewise. Thank you.
I mean, this is a huge night. I think you make a good comparison with the moving of the embassy because these are moments that change reality. And like the moving of the embassy changed the reality and changed the way Jerusalem's status was looked at throughout the world is what has also happened with.
And ironically, let me just note that everybody thought that it would blow up our relationships either literally or figuratively with the Arab world. It had the exact opposite effect.
Correct. I mean, the Abraham Accords are good proof of that as well. But what happened with America's decision or Trump's decision to send the B-2 bombers and to further destroy and probably eliminate to an extent that we do not yet fully understand and know the scope of which the Iranian nuclear program. The B-2 bombers flew from Missouri. They took off. They flew about 30-something hours direct, multiple mid-air refueling. People have asked me, why does it take so long for the B-2 bombers? Well, when you're carrying dozens, literally, of tons of explosives in your belly, you're not going to fly that fast, right? It's just that's the way it goes. They dropped about a dozen MOPs. Those are massive ordnance penetrators, GBU-57. It's the greatest bunker buster, most powerful weapon that is conventional that the U.S. military has. Only the U.S. military has the GBU-57. Only the U.S. military has B-2 bombers. People have asked me, why doesn't America give Israel a GBU-57? Even if they did, we don't have the aircraft to carry it. We don't have a way to drop it over a target. This really had to be done by the U.S. And you saw, Joe,
it's an 18-ton bomb, like each. And each of these planes, I think, were carrying 2 per, right? Correct. I think there were 6 total in the fleet and the squadron. Wow, and it's beyond what any of us can normally imagine. This has
got to be probably the most powerful conventional airstrike and bombing run in the history of mankind to some extent. And so precise, so direct, and really aimed at neutralizing Iran's nuclear program and taking it out. Israel was able to do some damage.
Yeah.
But what Trump has done is taken it to a whole new level. And the big question is now what will come next, and what will the Iranians decide to do? Will they attempt to rebuild, or will they understand that this is something that's not worth investing in anymore because the price is too high for them?
Right. I assume you were sleeping because I was sleeping and I got up for a reason I don't know. I didn't, I wasn't thirsty. I just sort of woke up and instinctively I checked my phone. And, it was filled with text messages. Isn't this amazing? Isn't this great? And I was like, what? And so because no sirens went off for us here in Jerusalem. And actually, it was pretty quiet until early, several hours after the attack when, we've had two major waves. And, at least as you and I record this, we're at 86 Israelis wounded, as far as I understand, and a lot of damage. So did you wake up instantly? Did somebody wake you up? Or I'm just curious.
I was fast asleep. And I think that, when you can get a good night's rest over the last, 10 days or so, you take him. Right?
Absolutely. I didn't even wake up my wife. I thought somebody in this house needs to be rested because I'm going to be up now for the rest of the night.
My wife woke me up because she was actually supposed to head out early today for a memorial at a cemetery. So she was up at like 5:20 and she wakes me up and I said, I look at my watch. I'm like, why are you waking me up so early? And she says, Yaakov, America attacked Iran. And I was, of course, up right away. And
that is the instant a shot of adrenaline that a reporter like you needs to go, okay, I'm on.
No, this is really, I think you know this, Joel. And it's history in the making for I think a number of reasons. The first is every U.S. president since Bill Clinton has promised that Iran will not be allowed to get a nuclear weapon, that is a red line. We have seen presidents contemplate, think about action, but every time walk away from it. Talk about the military options, say all options are on the table. That was Barack Obama's famous line, but never really do anything to advance it and capitulate always at the last minute into bad deals like the JCPOA. And let's even remember the Biden administration. The Biden administration came into office and what they wanted to do back in 2021 was go back to the JCPOA.
Right.
And thankfully that did not happen.
Yeah. But because of the Iranians, not because of the Biden team.
Because the Iranians
they thought it was a great thing. Let's go. Let's do it again.
Donald Trump to say enough is enough. We are stopping this once and for all is a big move. It's a big move because it finally puts the Iranians in the place that they need to be. And let's remind our listeners here. Iran is not just a threat to Israel, it is a threat to the entire world. They chant death to America just like they chant death to Israel. They operate an act to undermine America just like they operate an act to undermine Israel and the Gulf states and the closest allies of the United States here in the Middle East.
Yeah, and it's not just talk. In 1979, I'll just go through a few of these, right? Iran's new revolutionary regime took over the U.S. Embassy, held 52 Americans hostage for 444 days, completely humiliating. 1986 or 83, Iran directed Hezbollah to blow up the U.S. Marine barracks in Beirut, killing 241 Marines and other bombings there. Tremendous damage. 1996, the Khobar Towers explosion in Saudi Arabia, killing 19 American servicemen and maybe a couple civilians, and wounding hundreds more. And then, of course, more than 1,000 American servicemen killed in Iraq with IEDs that were all sent by Iran. So, and that has nothing to do with the Israelis. It's just pure America first. Why should we take care of this? Trump did this. I'm sure, obviously, Vice President Vance supported in the end, but he was not a fan of this. And he had been, I think there were enough leaks that my sources say are credible that Vance really didn't want this to happen. And major outside players that have the president's ear and are friends with the president, Steve Bannon and Tucker Carlson, among others, but those would be probably the two biggest kahunas, very, very hostile to this idea and sort of making the case that Israel is dragging Trump into a war that the United States has no business being in. It's not only – so you're certainly right that no American president, I think, ever really took this seriously. George W. Bush, you have to give – I mean, if you're going to give credit at all to using force, he used it. But that sort of blew up in his face. if you could all do history over again, it was Iran that was the problem. It turns out, not Iraq, but nevertheless, you can't accuse him of not being willing to take force. But as you write in your book about then Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Olmert making a decision to use military force to take out a secret Syrian nuclear reactor, George W. Bush told Olmert, "Don't do it." Right. Now, he didn't say it. Maybe it was a slight wink. At least Olmert felt he could do it anyway without reprisal. But my point is, nobody was willing to do this, and Trump had some significant resistance in his room, in his ear.
There was opposition, I think, definitely from J.D. Vance and other members. We look at some of the appointments that they've made. I mean, it was telling.
Tulsi Gabbard,
Tulsi Gabbard wasn't in the Situation Room.
Right. I don't think she lasts this. I think she's going to be reassigned or move on.
My guess would be like you, and but there are also other people. I mean, the isolationist camp, and you know this better than I do, within the Republican Party is not small. It is part of that wider MAGA camp, and it's part of the support of Donald Trump. And the fact that he was willing to say, I get that. I understand the power.
He was respectful of that view.
Right. I'm respectful of it. I understand it. But he recognized this moment in history. He recognized, I think, that this was a unique window of opportunity. By the way, Israel understood that this is the unique window of opportunity. Right. We had the proxies who were weak. We had Hezbollah gone. Well, not gone, but not in a position to attack us. Hamas, a fraction of what it once was. Iran's airspace exposed. And the fact that we had a friendlier president in the Oval allowed for this to happen. But I also think we have to keep in mind, Joel, is that Trump probably went into this saying, okay, I understand that Israel's going for it. I'm not saying yes, but I'm not saying no. And if we remember, the initial statements that came out of the White House and the State Department on June 13th, when Israel first attacked, were very cold. It was like, we're not part of this. Right. We didn't do it. We got nothing to do with it. And then you saw as the day went by and the success was so obvious of what Israel had achieved in decapitating the leadership of the military, taking out nuclear scientists, hitting the key facilities, Natanz and Isfahan and Parchin, taking out a lot of the ballistic missiles, starting to hunt the launchers. The shock and awe. Trump said, "Hold on, this is something I can attach myself to."
He loves winners, and he wants Bibi to be a winner. They've had their issues, but he struggles when Bibi looks like he can't get Gaza done, or if he looks like if there's a moment in which he's not looking strong, it's difficult for Trump. Not in some weird psychological, because he wants to help invest in winners or cut losses and move on.
But, I was thinking about this, and it's interesting you say this as well. I think that Israelis, to an extent, and this is maybe a deeper conversation, but Israelis have thought for a long time, maybe mistakenly, that we have to be weak to be sympathized in the world, right? That for people to want to ally with us, it's only when we're attacked and we're weak and we don't appear strong. But I think that maybe the opposite is true, is that when we are powerful, when we show determination, when we achieve something amazing, go back to the 6-Day War, that was the highest moment in Israeli history back then, right? In
which an Israeli prime minister asked an American president, "Please do this for me," and Lyndon Johnson said, "Hell no, no, and you shouldn't do it either. And if you do it, I'm not going to help you." And Levi Eshkol, who most Americans and most evangelicals who listen to this program, they don't even know the name Levi Eshkol, but they should, because this is a man who had the courage to defy President Lyndon Johnson. Nobody defied Lyndon Johnson, and he did. He wasn't trying to defy, but he was like, I have to do this. Yeah. And it was the greatest success ever, but it could have gone very badly. God was very merciful.
That when Israel is powerful and strong, people rally with it. Now, we have to do what's right always. I'm not saying go do bad things with that power. But what Israel did with Iran is so obviously correct and right and makes the world a safer place, that you saw how Trump evolved from we didn't have anything to do with it to making the media rounds and interviewing everywhere, and then to tweeting the other day, we have taken control of Iranian airspace.
Right.
Who's we? It's the Israeli air. But you know what? take the credit. And
Absolutely.
He wanted to attach himself to this and to go all the way. And to that, we should be grateful.
We absolutely should. And I think that a big part of this is the support of tens and tens of millions of evangelical Christians who have signaled, even though you could argue Iran, how does Iran fit in an evangelical Christian theology, much less instinct? No, because it's a threat to Israel as well as a threat to the United States. Evangelicals have instinctively understood this. I'm not saying they've tracked every moment of the process over the last 25 years, but every poll, evangelicals would say very high, never let Iran get the bomb, not just for Israel's sake, certainly for Israel's sake, but also for the United States' sake. And I think that world has helped Trump mitigate, very influential voices in his ear. On Friday, interestingly enough, Yaakov, I actually did an hour-long interview with former Vice President Mike Pence. That's why I slipped up for a moment between Pence and Vance. But anyway, and I know obviously there's a lot of people that have written off Mike Pence. Pence is a personal friend, but he's also, I don't believe anybody in the world knows Donald Trump better politically and geopolitically and how he makes decisions in a crisis, what his instincts are, than Mike Pence, because he spent more time with him than anybody. And certainly in those 4 years, maybe more than Melania. And I asked him, and his instinct was, if Netanyahu needs it, I'm paraphrasing, but if Netanyahu needs it, Trump will do it at this point, because Bibi has given Trump all the latitude to try the 60 days and even try this arguable 2-week additional window, although we didn't get that far, thank God. But the point is that Bibi has been playing ball, has been working closely, but believes this is imperative, and I'm going to go without you, but I want to go with you. But if you guys could finish off the job, we certainly would appreciate it. And so that was very interesting. And thank God we posted that podcast on early Saturday morning, and we published the lead story on All Israel News saying, finish the job. That was Pence's main point. Because, 8 hours, 10 hours later, whatever Trump did. Let's shift then from how impressive it was, how grateful you and I are, both as Americans and as Israelis, to President Trump for what he's done, because it was so decisive. Let's talk about Netanyahu, because Netanyahu is the most divisive figure in the history of modern Israel. And yet, it seems like everybody is with him. But I don't want to give my assessment. You wrote a great piece in the Jerusalem Post. We'll put the link in the show notes. Just walk our listeners and viewers through your assessment of where we are with Netanyahu and the sort of both the psychology of how he got here, and what do you think the political impact is going to be?
Well, I mean, I've been a long time, and I don't shy away from this. I've been a critic of Netanyahu, and even before October 7th. And I think that October 7th and what happened with the Hamas invasion was a result of bad policies that he had put into place.
Yeah, I can't disagree with that, unfortunately.
But when I look at what has changed here in the Middle East, and I look at October 7th as a coin of two sides. There's the one side of the failures, and the other side is the re-engineering of the Middle East. And that's the weakening of Hezbollah, the fall of the Assad regime, now the prior vulnerability of Iran and taking advantage of that window of opportunity to attack Iran. This is Netanyahu's doing. And I'll say even more than that, it's Netanyahu learning the lessons of October 7th, of saying, what's the big takeaway, Joel, of October 7th is that when you have an enemy that builds weapons, that amasses capabilities, that trains, that openly says explicitly, I am coming to kill you,
right? You
have to believe them. You can't kick the can down the road and give them a suitcase of cash and think it's going to be okay. It's not. It just buys time. They grow stronger. The threat grows bigger. This attack now, because I've had people have said to me, well, they weren't yet building the bomb. So what should we do? Wait for them to be connecting the red wire and the blue wire and then attack?
Or they haven't loaded it onto the warhead.
It's absurd. It's absurd. And you know what? Look at what these missiles, and you mentioned how many people were wounded just today. The Israeli missile defense architecture, which includes Iron Dome at the bottom, David Sling, Arrow 2, Arrow 3, backed by the THAAD, the American system that's also here, and Aegis ships that are off the coast in the Mediterranean. Right. With all those systems, we're able to intercept about 90% of the missiles, but 10% get through. Unfortunately, always like that.
Yeah.
These 10%, though, look how much damage they
Yeah.
cause. And therefore, if Iran, which went into this war with about 2,500, maybe 3,000 missiles, had been at the point, like it wanted to, that it would one day be at 10,000 missiles, I don't even want to think about what that would do to the state of Israel, even with the missile defense that we have. So,
well, because the other factor that's a highly classified number is we don't know how many interceptors we actually have. So
correct.
at what point is the system completely overwhelmed? Thank God Hezbollah's with their 150,000 aren't in the game also.
Right. And there have been reports that the Arrow, the longer range, the one used for the ballistic missiles, we have a limited number, and that makes sense. Each one costs about $1 to $2 million, just each missile interceptor. But I think that when we look at that, we look at what Netanyahu has achieved. And then we look at, on the other hand, how he was able to bring Donald Trump to the understanding that this was the right move for America, first and foremost, and of course, a benefit to Israel. Because if we go back just a couple months ago, it seemed that Donald Trump, when he came into office, was actually going down the isolationist route to some extent. He came in, he said, no more wars. I'm here to end all wars. He got a hostage deal with Hamas back in January, even before taking office. He started to talk about Gaza starvation. He started to say, Israel, you got to wrap it up. He was talking about, he made a deal with the Houthis that did not include Israel, the group in Yemen.
And baby, don't attack Iran while I'm negotiating. It's not going to happen. It's not good.
And he said that too. And he didn't want an attack. And he said, don't do it. And then he came to the region, and he went to Saudi Arabia, and he went to Qatar, and he went to the UAE, and he did not come here. He met with Ahmed Ashara.
Yeah, he was making me very nervous, I will tell you. And I know I've met the president twice in the Oval Office at Mar-a-Lago, and I had to keep reminding myself, he's the most pro-Israel president in history, and he hates Iran's leadership. I mean, he's been tougher on Iran than any. But all those things that you just said, and a few others, we don't have the time to get into. That was making me nervous. One of which was when Steve Witkoff started, who has no background in the Iran file, started negotiating and saying, yeah, you can enrich up to 3.65%. We're
exactly.
Like, wait a minute, that is the JCPOA. And even Trump told the Wall Street Journal, I haven't decided what. Now, the pushback of Lindsey Graham and Tom Cotton, and I think inside the room, Marco Rubio, and millions of evangelicals, and obviously Bibi and Ron Dermer, the strategic affairs minister, all of that did get his attention. Like, you don't want to go and become Biden and Obama, do you? Like, so thank God. But that's where he was.
Sure. And that had people concerned that Trump was not the same Trump. And I think that he understood the importance. He was whoever it was, whether it was Rubio and Cotton and Graham and other people within the administration, Hegseth, who got him over the line. But there's no doubt that you can also give a lot of this credit to Netanyahu and to Dermer. And people had thought, and I couldn't help but not mention something that happened in the Knesset, the Israeli parliament, a month ago.
Yes, this is interesting. Your point about
Yair Lapid, the opposition leader.
Sorry, set that up again so people hear the name.
Yair Lapid, the leader of the opposition, gets up in the Knesset, in the Israeli parliament.
Just a few months ago, right?
A month ago. Just a month ago. Gets up in the parliament and gives a speech where he blasts Netanyahu and says to him, you've lost America. You don't understand America. I've told you don't understand America. Look at what's happened. You've lost Trump. And Netanyahu's sitting there with a smile, and he makes the famous Israeli gesture where he puts his fingers together in his right hand and he goes up and down. It's the gesture for savlanut, patience. Yeah, right. Just wait. 1 minute.
It's like somebody's pulling in. It wants to pull in front of you. And
you say to them,
in your lane, you're like, hey, it's just a second.
Give me a second. Exactly. Yeah. And what Netanyahu meant, no one knew back then. But when you look back then and think about now, you understand. He already knew where this was going. He didn't know Trump would get involved, but he knew what Israel was heading towards. He knew that he was coordinated with America, and he knew that this was going ahead, and that we would all see that this was an unprecedented alliance, an illustration of this alliance that you said in the beginning, which really brings to life, and I think takes to a whole new level, the Israel-U.S. relationship. We've seen for years how it's been about America giving Israel weapons, America giving Israel aid, Israel being on the front lines, Israel fighting. Never have we seen Israeli and American military take on targets together like this.
No.
And this is something that opens just a whole new dimension of what's possible and what opportunities are out there.
Amen. I think the argument that Netanyahu, and again, his right-hand man, the Minister of Strategic Affairs, Ron Dermer, who had been just for, I know you know this, Yaakov, but for our audience who may not remember the name Ron Dermer, Ron was the the Israeli ambassador to the United States for 7 years. For Christians, that might be considered a tribulation, but Ron was so effective because he was born and raised in Miami Beach. He's American in his genes, but he made Aliyah, as did we, and became an Israeli and is truly Benjamin Netanyahu's right-hand man in terms of strategy and in terms of diplomacy. The two of them, I think, made a very effective case to Trump, which Trump gave them all the opportunity to give it. And it wasn't manipulative. It was, look, you're absolutely right, Mr. President. You don't want to start wars. You want to end wars. This is ending a nearly 50-year war that the Iranian regime declared on America, beginning with the taking of the hostages at the U.S. Embassy on November 4th, 1979. So we're ending something. That's one. Secondly, you made a promise that every American president has made but didn't keep. And just like you made the vow to recognize Jerusalem as Israeli capital and then move the U.S. Embassy the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem, everybody else made the promise. They didn't keep it. But this is your opportunity. We'll do the dirty work. We are not asking you to put sons and daughters in harm's way. We'll put our sons and daughters in harm's way for as long as it takes. It's our war. But there's one last piece that we can do the layup, but it's almost like we can do the alley-oop, but we need you to do the slam dunk. And that is, technologically, you're able, if we clear the skies and destroy all the air defense systems and do all the rest, we'll do it, and we'll keep doing it in the days and weeks, maybe months that follow. We're asking if you're willing. We'll do it ourselves if we have to. But if you want to, this is your moment, not just to finish the Iran regime's threat. We're not even asking you to do regime change. We're just asking to end this particular specific threat the way the United States uniquely can do it. And this also sends a message to Xi Jinping in Beijing and to Vladimir Putin and our dear leader in Pyongyang. Like, this is, you can get a lot of wins as long as we do most of the work. That's the alliance that Trump talks about, including the money.
Yeah. Well, no, what you're saying is really the big takeaway, because when America, I always say, and I travel a lot in the region, I do a lot of work with other Arab countries and bringing people together for gatherings and conversations and dialogue. And one thing I can say they all have in common here: they want to see an active, involved United States of America. And when they see that, that gives them confidence and a sense of security. And that is something that I bet you in Riyadh today, they woke up with a smile, and in Abu Dhabi with a smile, and in Rabat, Morocco with a smile, and of course here in Jerusalem.
Even Amman and Cairo, I would argue, despite
of course, I think
rhetoric,
you're right. I think
they are
right.
very
But
happy.
in Russia and in Beijing, they wake up and they say, hold on, what does this now mean for us? Maybe we need to be a little more careful. Maybe we need to rethink what we're doing. This is why this type of action, when done right, has the opportunity and can really change reality far beyond the scope of just what we're talking about here in this region.
Amen. Last point. I want to roll out something to you that I've alluded to in various ways, but I haven't talked to you about it, and I haven't really put it center into a podcast or a TV show or column yet. And then we can close on this. But I think. So I have resisted the idea that Netanyahu has been prolonging the war in Gaza or anywhere else because he thinks that keeps him in office. I think that is people that hate him already, okay, well, they already think that. And there are people on the center right who, and you may be one of them. I don't really remember. I know you're more critical than I have, though I have been critical of him. And of course, the great stain on his career has been October 7th. But my view is because of October 7th, and because I believe Netanyahu is a patriot, a flawed patriot, like we all are, but a patriot at his heart, I believe that he knew at that point that he could never win re-election, but he did not care about that. I believe what he was doing was saying, my only legacy, and it's not about me, but it's partly about me, which is to win. And I'm not going to take Biden's deals May of last year, when he gave this exact same deal as Trump and Witkoff offered essentially in January. But Witkoff and Trump were saying is, that's a deal for now, and you can keep fighting. And Biden said, no, that's it. Permanent ceasefire, which is surrender. And I think because Winston Churchill is the guy that Bibi Netanyahu fashions himself after more than any other, I believe that he wanted to win and win so decisively. And then I personally believe that he's never intended to run again, that he intends to walk off the stage with the great accomplishments. And that may be in the next few months, certainly by October 26th. But I think he will leave now as a great hero of the Jewish people and the state of Israel and the region, actually, and the U.S.-Israel alliance, even though he will have, indictments and court cases. And most importantly, of course, he will have October 7th on his record. How does that what do you think is – we'll give you the last word.
So I don't know. It's always difficult to predict the politics here in Israel, and will he leave or will he stay? And there's a good argument to make of what you just said. But I'll tell you three things I'm thinking about. One is I spoke with an Arab friend last week, someone in a country that we don't have relations with, who said to me, there should be a statue of Netanyahu somewhere in the Arab world for how he has changed, not reality just for Israel, how he has changed reality for us. Those of us who oppose Hezbollah, those of us who oppose the Islamic regime in Iran, those of us who oppose the Muslim Brotherhood. This is good for us, not just for Israel. I think that what Netanyahu has done definitely is up there with the great leaders of the Jewish people. And I'll tell you something else, Joel.
And you say that as not a vitriolic critic, but as a pretty strong critic of
I'll tell you something. I mean, it's not a zero-sum game. It's not 1 or 0. Like you said, he's flawed, and I've long have problems with his divisiveness and the way he uses politics to polarize,
bringing extremists like Ben Gvir and Smotrich into the process.
There's so much to talk about.
Yeah,
but it's not one-dimensional, and I think that people get caught up. Even this morning, when I'm talking with people who I know are critics of him, don't like him, they can't rise above. There are moments that you have to rise above, but I think that you can't just look at it as a zero-sum game. People are complex and they have they're multi-characteristics. But the last thing I want to say on this is that I've long thought since October 7th. October 7th was a great disaster, the likes of which we had never experienced and still is still there and still has to be studied and still has to be learned from. So it cannot be
solved. It's not even done yet.
It has to be solved and it's not over 100% right. What we have seen since October 7th, the bravery of Israeli people, the courage, the running towards the fire as opposed to away from it, the self-sacrifice, the re-engineering of the Middle East. I mean, I'm not a rabbi, I'm not a priest, I'm not some, spiritual leader. What I do think is if I was making the rules around here, I think we needed a new book for what we call the Tanakh, a new book for the Old Testament, a new book to be added in. If we have we need a New Testament. You were just about to say it. The book could be added to the New Testament. I don't care where it goes. But like we have the scroll of Esther about a story from Purim from thousands of years ago. What's happening today in our lives is a remaking of biblical proportions. And if you don't see God's hand in all of this, if you don't see the bigger story of the Jewish people coming back and fighting back, then you're missing the big story, I think.
Amen.
And again, I'm not saying God is what made this possible. I'm not getting into the theological conversation.
I will, but it's okay.
but you can. but
I've been saying, Yaakov, I've been saying to friends, evangelical friends mostly of late, Jewish friends, Israeli friends as well. We know from the Bible that the God of Israel neither slumbers nor sleep. But I'm saying we aren't getting much slumber or sleep here in Israel either with all these attacks and all these alarms. But anyway, all right, back to you.
But I just think that this is such a 1,000 years from now, someone will read this scroll, the scroll of, you could call it Netanyahu. I don't know what you call it, but what has happened starts with the disaster and ends hopefully with this new found stability in the Middle East, and normalization with Saudi Arabia now is within arm's reach. Mm-hmm. And how is this different than the scroll of Esther? These are similar stories, and they are ones that can last and resonate for millennia.
I say amen to that, and I thank you for closing this interview with that, because Yaakov, I know that many religious Jews that I've spoken to over the last year and a half have had their faith shaken. Mostly it's sort of shifted back as we've had successes. But in those early days and weeks and months, I mean, even, you and I have had some heart-to-heart conversations. People really, the secular in the country were like, they were turning to the Psalms. We need God. But others who were religious were struggling. Yeah. Not all, but I'm just saying it was a genuine, where is that God that neither slumbers nor sleeps? Isn't he Shomer Israel? Isn't he the guardian of Israel? What just happened? And I think this is going to be a reminder that throughout Jewish history, we take some terrible hits, but God is merciful, and we need to keep the faith. And
amen.
Yeah, amen. Hey, Yaakov Katz, thank you so much. Look, I want to talk to you soon. I know your book is done, but it's not out. Is that correct?
Right behind me.
Will you just show us or is it just the manuscript? Okay, but it's not out yet, correct?
Not out yet. Coming out September 2nd.
September 2nd. Okay, I want to interview you about that, both on podcast and on the Rosenberg Report, and of course, All Israel News. We'll cover that. When you get a chance to send me an advance copy,
I will.
I'll start reading it this summer. But thank you. Thank you so much. Keep up the great work. Stay safe, you and your family, and let's talk again soon.
Thanks.
I appreciate it. Well, I'm very grateful to my friend, former editor-in-chief of the Jerusalem Post, Yaakov Katz. Fascinating conversation. I really appreciated his insights on a historic day. I do not want you to underestimate what a big deal this is. And it was interesting, Yaakov said, as an Orthodox religious Jewish person, I don't want to focus too much on the God part of this and what role he may have played. I don't want to get into theology. And you heard me say, well, I will. So just to close this, look, this is about the tremendous bravery, courage, and skill of American airmen, soldiers, sailors, and Marines, and the courage of President Trump to make the decision to send U.S. forces to attack and destroy, completely apparently destroy, the major nuclear sites that Israel had not yet completely destroyed, and doing that with 30,000-pound bunker buster bombs. That is a huge decision. President Trump deserves enormous credit for it. I don't say that as a political statement. Just, if Biden had done it, I would praise him. It's President Trump that has done it, and I'm giving him credit where credit is due, honor where honor is due, just as the book of Romans tells us to do. At the same time, for all those pilots and all those air traffic controllers and all the people that were involved on the ships and so forth that are shooting down missiles that are flying out of Iran, just tremendous credit to the American military and to the Trump administration. Same thing with Prime Minister Netanyahu and his team and all the IDF forces, all our pilots, all our related Air Force personnel and ground troops. Just tremendous courage and success. At the same time, as you look through the Bible, you will see many, 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 many examples where the Israeli military went into battle, and it was the hard work and the courage of fighting King David and others, Joshua and others, Gideon and others. They fight, but we see it time and time again. It's the God of Israel who gives the victory. Okay? And I believe it's the prayers of tens of millions, millions and millions and millions and millions, hundreds of millions of evangelical Christians in the United States and Canada and around the world that have been praying for the peace of Jerusalem, and in this case, praying for what turned out to be the success of this military operation and the tremendous unity between the United States and Israel at this time. In the next podcast, Lord willing, Lynn and I will talk about, there are a lot of questions that people are already asking us. I don't think we should gloat over this, and I don't think we should, I think we can celebrate the success of destroying these facilities because they wipe out an existential threat to Israel, to the Arab world, to the United States. But there are some complexities here. There are other nuances that we should explore spiritually and geopolitically, and we'll do that. But for now, this is it was important that we let you hear what has actually happened as President Trump has made this historic decision. No American president has ever made it. And it wasn't entirely clear that President Trump was going to make it. But President Trump did make it. He ordered U.S. B-2 bombers into action to destroy the nuclear sites in Iran. And it is a day of tremendous relief and encouragement here, not just in Israel, but throughout the Arab world. And I hope that all Americans and people of goodwill all around the world will be encouraged that evil was restrained today, that the nuclear terror threat that Iran was building has been destroyed today, June 22nd, 2025. Please, as we close, keep praying. And please check out the show notes for all the things that we referred to, including Yaakov Katz's article that I mentioned from the Jerusalem Post today and other articles with all Israel news coverage of what's happened in the last few hours. And please make a donation to the Joshua Fund's Rapid Response Fund. Again, you can go to joshuafund.com, joshuafund.com, and you can make a tax-deductible donation. In case you're checking, last point, the ship is full. We don't have any more cabins to offer you to join us on the Epicenter briefing at sea, the Joshua Fund cruise to Alaska in August. So that is full. I'm grateful to all of you who signed up. I'm looking forward to that, but I just need to tell you, in case it hasn't been clear yet so far, that the ship is full and we can't take any more people. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. Please share this with family and friends so they can understand what's happened, why it matters, and how to pray. From Jerusalem, from the eye of the storm, this is Joel Rosenberg. On behalf of all of the Joshua Fund board and staff and the podcast team, thank you for listening to this episode of Inside the Epicenter.
I'm Joel Rosenberg. On your left, you'll find some videos we've chosen specifically for you. We look forward to partnering with you to bless Israel and her neighbors in the name of Jesus.